Yo, what is going on, guys? Sekapoko here, bringing you another Genshin Impact video. For this video, as you can see on the right-hand side in the bottom, you're right, whatever. Anyways, you can see I'm playing a controller, and I'm playing on controller on Genshin Impact, and I'm going to show my experiences about how it works, what I like, what I don't like, and what you guys can think about it. So, guys, without further ado, let's go jump into it. Alright, so the first thing on controller is when I'm running around the map, I do like this a lot. I like the feeling of a controller while running. The thing that I'm not used to is, in comparison to PC, is like the first thing is I sprint a lot on PC because I'm used to just hitting the shift button. Because like if you ever play Call of Duty or played any kind of PC shooter, you end up sprinting a lot. But the button is R1 for sprint and R1 for dodge. It's very seamless to get into and nice to. The hard part though is that people who play like a little like this and they put their fingers here on the controller versus like the normal kind of just up and down up here and have a more relaxed posture will do better on controller versus the people that just have a more relaxed posture. The relaxed posture on this makes it a little bit harder for aiming, for hitting things, etc. And I have experienced some hitches and some downsides with controller, whereas there are some also positives with controller. So one of the things that I like about controller is the mobility on a joystick for your actual character is better than on a keyboard. I will say it. For using your actual physical character, it is better for moving the character around. However, iframing, things like that, that takes some getting used to, and when you do get used to it, it is pretty seamless and about the same as on PC. Not gonna say it's better or worse, that's more of a preference choice at that point. So, while using this game on controller, the button for your ability is R2, so you can see it pops out over there, and your attack ability is on circle. And these are the basic default controls, which is the ones I'm going to be using for describing this whole thing. And that's totally fine, because circle spamming is not too bad, but if you need to change direction, of course that is kind of an issue. So if you want to change camera angles and hit circle over and over again, there is an issue for spam characters like archers and things like that. So if you wanted to spam on an archer, a little bit difficult. Of course, the auto aiming for this is going to be L2 to hold and then R2 to shoot. So kind of a normal thing for all console gamers. So if you are used to shooting like this, it is really, really seamless. The other thing for switching characters is they're all on the D-pad. So you are going to be getting used to that. And that is kind of weird. So I'm going to go over here and go into a fight real quick. And then switching over using this, switching to a different character, using an ability, dodging, and then trying to get into it. The experience for dodging in this game that I have noticed on this version is like switching between the different characters and also dodging. Kind of a tricky thing to get used to, but eventually it only took me about an hour to get used to this in general, so it's not too bad. Oh, I just got bopped though. As I said, I got used to it, right? Okay, so overall, repositioning with dashes, things like that, kind of gets used to it. It's not too bad. So it's definitely an interesting transition. You can get used to it. I have found some issues with the aiming, and that part is a little bit tricky. And another thing that was kind of a nuisance, and I'll see if I can replicate it right now. It happens when you drop down. I think I can do it here. You'll notice that when I drop down, the camera will automatically pan down. And what I'll have to do a lot of times is the camera will pan down all the way to here. And so if I dropped to, let's see if I can find like a bluff that this will happen to. This does happen sometimes in the gameplay, and you have to do this on PC too. This is not just controller specific, but it is more of an issue on controller. Let's see, this will work here. So if I were to jump over here, oh, get a running start, the camera will instantly down. So now to pan up, you can see how long it takes to pan up. So this is kind of an issue on controller, and I don't like that aspect of it because the movement of the controller is a little slower. And I right now have the max sensitivity right now on, and as you can see how fast we're spinning. This is on max sensitivity for controller. So I don't know if you can turn that up even further or what you gotta do. But what I have noticed on PC as well as on controller is that the Y-axis changes at a very different pace than the X-axis. So the X-axis will always change much faster. So you just gotta get used to the changes on Y-axis versus X-axis on any version of the game, whether it be for controller or for PC. So that's what I've experienced for this kind of gameplay, first off. Now, when I get into more difficult kinds of gameplay, I notice that the movement and how I switch between characters, it gets a little bit more difficult. The positioning of the camera will shift, and I'll have to like try to reposition. So I'll get you into a fight here so you kind of see what I mean. let's go ahead and get over here. You can kind of see I'm having an issue here with the positioning of the camera. That has nothing to do with the controller versus the PC. And getting the dodges right kind of takes a little bit getting used to, because it's a lot of flick movements between your controller as well as your hands. So you do have some issues with the changes. So getting used to the flicks will help, you know, will come with time. And doing this, you can see flick here, and then switching to an ultimate, moving around with high mobility, and getting back into the fight. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, pop an ultimate, and then switch out to a different character, which is going to be this archer. You dodge again, do best, pop mobility, go ahead and keep going in. So again, positioning with the character, very kind of tricky with this because the buttons are all over the place, and I'm just not used to it as a player. You know, it could be easier for you as a controller player, but these are just my experiences. Okay, there's my repositioning. I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to another character, drop a taunt, switch it back to another character, and you see some issues with the camera angles where I'm not able to switch the camera angle. The issue is because the joystick is on the same button that I'm using for the shots. The shots are on circle, so my issue is mainly because I have to move the controller so often and like flick between those two things. You can do that with your thumb, and if you do want to play with your index finger here and switch back and forth between it, you can get that mobility. I personally find that to be very uncomfortable, and I don't like playing like that, because if you're gonna be playing here for like you're playing for like 10 hours a day or 8 hours a day, having your fingers like that for 8 hours a day is, I don't think, very good for your fingers, but I'm not sure because I'm not, you know, I'm not a doctor. I don't fucking know. I mean, it's uncomfortable for me, so just don't do it, right? Alright. Another thing is that when I switch to a melee character, I'm going to be using this character here. Repositioning on melee characters is kind of weird at times. You flick the camera forth. So, like, I want to, like, see where everything is, and I always have to switch between characters. So, a lot of people are going to be playing melee characters on launch, and melee characters I found to be a little bit more difficult on controller, but I'm still trying to get used to them. On PC, I'm having no issue with the melee controller characters, but it's because I'm able to switch the camera angles a little bit easier. On a melee character, you have to switch the camera angles a lot, so you have to get used to like repositioning, getting into the character, so click over so you can see the camera angles, dodge, and that. So if you don't get the dodges right, you get frozen, I can see here, and that's happened to me a lot. So getting used to that is kind of tricky. And I'm still trying to get used to it, but it has taken a lot longer to get used to melee controls than it is to ranged controls. Mage controls are pretty simple to get used to because they're pretty static. You can just basically just spam circle and stay in one spot while then dodging attacks, so they're a lot easier. Whereas a melee character, you know, you have to dodge in, flip the character around. There's a lot more mobility in your left joystick, so it's a very different experience. Healers obviously are pretty simple. You just heal and then switch back or whatever. It's stupid easy for Barbara. So that's what I've kind of experienced for those kinds of characters. The other thing that I have experienced while playing a controller that was really nice was when exploring the landscape, I can navigate really easily through terrain, and because you have the freedom of a controller, you can dodge a little bit easier at times too with certain characters. And this is another thing. You see the camera snap right there. The camera snaps happen a little bit more often from what I can see, but if I do need to switch back to cameras, I can also change characters and do that. And I don't feel like this camera switch happens as often on just PC with no controller, but I do experience a lot more on the controller. You can see how the camera angles change a little bit there, and that happens usually with like crazy bluffs like this, where like the line of sight changes and goes up and down. So if you're used to that and you like that kind of gameplay, that's how it will experience. But you can see when there's a character behind you and in front of you, there is issues. So there's a character actually below me right here that fell down. There's two of them, and a character in front of me. So now the camera's all janky and trying to figure everything out. This happens on both versions, but it's a little bit easier on control on mouse and keyboard. Because on mouse keyboard, you'll constantly be able to like move your mouse, and it won't reposition the camera all the time because you'll be stuck on one rotation of the camera. But where here, you have to get a better angle on the characters and then try to figure out how you're going to aim against them. So I do find that the controller is a good option for people, but you're just going to have to use the camera angles a little bit differently. I think that the controller is a good option. It just plays different, and it plays very different than the other versions. And what I'll also do is I will be creating a guide on mobile. So I'll be playing this on mobile as well and telling you my thoughts and feelings on PC versus mobile versus controller. So it'll be a subsequent video after this. But my name's Sekapoko. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did enjoy the video, you want more content like this, let me know in the comment section down below. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Peace.